Good morning, Maya Parback. Here's the plan. I pushed the engineer today to tell me what will happen that is new. Because so far, every day, for the last 2 or 3 days at least, I've been told more of the same. And so far, every day, there's been something new, staircases or something similar. Today, he insists nothing new, so it will be more of the same. We will therefore try to take a quick look into the world of tie beams and rebar. What could possibly go wrong? Stop that. Stop exiting. What's wrong with talking about rebar, tie beams? Come back. Trust me, it'll be fascinating. Or it won't. Well, it's 7:45. The brains trust are up there. Builder, engineer, lead foreman. I'll get up there a bit later. I need to pluck up the courage first. Music blaring out in the background. Hopefully YouTube's algorithm doesn't interfere. We've got guys above and below. Guys all over the place really. A lot more that we can't see right now in this angle. So we'll see what progress there is today. We'll see if there's any accidents with me going up these steps or down these steps. That's the thing that will go wrong. I can almost guarantee it. Let's have a look at the front of the property. At the front, team of 3. I actually think it might be a team of 4. I think one's wandered off somewhere. As you can see, forms being put in place for the gate. We had the left side was already in place yesterday. The right side going in now. Not sure whether next it will be a repeat of the process over here or whether it will be doing more work, maybe on the columns and possibly the top beam on this side. We will see as the day progresses. A huge health warning to go with what I'm about to say. At school, I was absolutely rubbish at chemistry. There was only one subject I was worse at, and that was physics. And there is some physics in this. So I have spent the morning talking to the engineer and talking to Mr. Google, but I could get bits of this horribly, horribly wrong. When you guys view this, if anybody does know what they're talking about, and clearly I don't, please put comments in and correct me. Time for the dummy and a hard hat to return. Yesterday, we talked about phenolic boards and phenolic resin, and I know it was just an emotional roller coaster. So we're going to try and bring it back down to a more down-to-earth, less emotional subject. Rebar. Now, to talk about rebar, to me it seems to make sense that you start by talking about concrete. Concrete suffers from stress. It worries that it hasn't made the dinner for the kids. Or did they brush their teeth? No, okay. So it suffers from 2 key types of stress. There's a third one, but there's 2 ones that we'll look at here, which is compression and tension. Now, concrete is marvellous at dealing with compression. When you push heavy weights on top of it, it stands up to it really well. Frankly, it's pretty damn useless at dealing with tension. Its tensile strength is very poor. I saw somewhere it's 1/8 of its compressive strength. Not sure if that's necessarily always true, but it's a guideline. So basically, if you sit something heavy on concrete, it stands up to it really well. If you start hitting it with something or putting forces on it that move it around a little bit, it's rubbish. And that's where rebar comes into place. Rebar is really very good at dealing with that tension. So you add rebar, good at tension, concrete, good at compression, and in theory you have a much sturdier piece of flooring that will survive most things. In a beam, to make things more complicated, as you move along it away from a support column, those pressures change. Close to the column, tension is basically focused at the top and compression at the bottom. By the time you get to the middle of the beam, it's completely reversed. Given the fact that we want to use rebar to add tensile strength, we put rebar close to the columns, or additional rebar, towards the top where that tension is. As you get to the mid-span, we switch over and you put the additional rebar closer to the bottom. The beams we're using here are 45 centimetres high and 25 centimetres wide. Each one has 4 16mm rebar at the top and 4 16mm rebar at the bottom. When I say the top, there still has to be a 4 centimetre gap so that it can be surrounded by concrete. So in effect, you've got a gap of 37 centimetres between the top rebar and the bottom rebar. And then you put the middle ones in, which are not in the middle. Just below the top ones, near the column, you have 3 additional 16mm rebar, and mid-span you still have separate 3 16mm rebar towards the bottom. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. While it's lunchtime and we're not disturbing anybody, let's take a look first at splicing. So this is looking from the south side, and this is where we have a very long span, stretching all the way from down in that corner, all the way back to this corner. So clearly much more than the 9-metre lengths of rebar that we're trying to use. So right here, in the middle of your shot, roughly, is where there's a splice. And you can see there is quite a reasonable gap between the closest column, which is this one. That's, I'm guessing, 1 metre to 1.5 metres. Not central to this span to the next column, but certainly well away from the closest column. And on the anchoring on this side, if you can make out, I'll try and zoom in, you can see that the rebar coming back across towards us is bent down, and it goes inside the final top rebar going from our left to right, or our right to left. To me, that looks correct. We do, however, have a problem, because over here, at the moment, if you can see, those 4 rebar coming across are hooked over the left to right final rebar. They don't go inside it. I'm going to talk to the engineer about that, because I believe that that anchoring of those rebar coming across is incorrect, and I think it needs to be redone. We'll come back shortly and get an answer on that. This is looking from the front, and I don't want to talk loudly because there's a couple of guys getting some rest. But in this beam, it's a little harder to make out because they've got that black board hiding it a little bit. But they have put in the additional 3 rebar. And if you can see, starting over in the corner there, the additional rebar are quite close to the top rebar. But then it switches and we get to these mid-span, I think they're called, mid-span rebar. And they are at the bottom, or close to the bottom. And so what those rebar are trying to deal with is the tensile strength, the tension issue. So the rebar are placed where the tension is greatest. Close to the columns, it's at the top of the beam. Mid-span, it's at the bottom of the beam. So that's why they are positioned as they are. Quick chat with the engineer. He confirms this one's wrong. Where those rebar coming towards us are bent down after the final top rebar, the closest one to us, is incorrect. Over there, it's been done correctly. And when I have looked at others, they have been done correctly as well. Although I didn't walk all the way around, so I've just asked the engineer to do that and just make sure we don't have any more like this. I don't know how catastrophically bad this is, but I might not have done this if LC Gilbert hadn't put a question about rebar into the comments. So, LC Gilbert, thank you very much. I do vaguely remember seeing something similar on a previous build. I know you mentioned you'd seen something like this. So this is why I desperately need people to give me comments, good or bad. You know, we're not trying to hide anything here. So please, everybody, if you do know something about building, clearly I don't. We know that. We've identified that in spades multiple times. You can help me and you can help other people who do watch this for any future builds they might have. Right, it is less than 30 minutes after I spoke to the engineer, and JR is in the final stages of correcting that problem. All of those rebar now are inside, the ones that are coming towards us are now inside the closest top rebar. Job almost done. No flies on these guys. Well, look, there might be, because flies are a nightmare here. But you know what I mean, hopefully. Okay, says JR, all good now. It is 3:40. So close to the end of the day, given that it's a Saturday, so 4 o'clock's the finish time. Here at the front, we have columns partially poured on this side, and over with Ali we have another one. So we've got the gate columns partly poured. Still clearly quite a bit of work to be done, but we have a defined gate without a gate. More and more and more scaffolding, more and more phenolic board. A phrase I'd never even heard of until yesterday. Now, the house is getting ever so slightly darker. So, lots more has gone in today. I'm not quite finished yet. You might be able to hear people up on the roof. That is the end of the day. And I have made those fateful steps very slowly. So, let's have a look. I am up on top. It took me about 2 hours and 45 minutes to climb the, what, 10 steps? 11, 12? I don't think I'll be doing it again anytime soon. But I thought it might be nice to get a view from up here without using the drone. And trust me, next time I'm using the drone. So the end of the week, a week in which we got a ton of phenolic board in place, a week in which scaffolding went up everywhere, a week in which tie beams were added all over the place. This is looking back towards Mount Arayat, and this is roughly the view we're going to get from our balcony on the front of our bedroom. without the tree. That'll be gone. Shame about all the cables above ground over there, but never mind, you can't have everything. It's going to be a fabulous view. So that's the end of the week. A couple of points. Today we had a long session, obviously, on rebar and concrete. So 2 points on that. Number one, is that the kind of content you want? You know, a complete dummy talking about things he clearly knows nothing about, but trying to cover some of the very, very basics. Is that what you want? Whether you're a subscriber or not, whether you've commented before or not, please stick a comment in. Oh, by the way, if you're not a subscriber, you're very naughty. Please put a comment in. Let me know. Yes, we want more of this nonsense, or no, please, please stop. It's ridiculous. Second point, we caught a small issue with the anchoring of rebar. It is very easy, having seen that, it would be very easy for people to start hurling bricks at the engineer, the foreman, the builder. Please don't. I am pretty confident that in the roughly 1 month that we may have until the concrete is poured, they would have caught it. Fact was, I was specifically looking for it, and I happened to find one area where that was the case. The engineer is not an engineer who sits under the tree all day looking at drawings and doing nothing practical. He is up here, or he's around the site a lot. He catches, I guess, a lot before I see it. I guess the foreman catches a lot before I see it. I happened to catch one thing today, and I would prefer if we don't have people now hurling insults at them saying how terrible that was. It's free world, it's free speech on YouTube, up to a point. You can say whatever you like. I do feel very slightly protective of them, having had close to 60 days of working with these guys. You see how much, hopefully you see how much they get right. And we happened to catch one thing today that had gone wrong. This whole channel says what could possibly go wrong. Well, something did, and it was found and it was fixed. So, one more time, please try to moderate any negative comments towards the crew here. And that is it for the week. We'll be back on Monday, and we'll see what on earth we can talk about once the engineer says to me, oh, more of the same. So, have a great weekend, if you're watching this just before a weekend. See you next week.